Well, welcome to Community Connections. I'm your host, Loran Graham, and this show is all about highlighting the great things happening with nonprofits right here in the Spokane community. Today, we have the privilege of having as our guest Colleen Fuchs, the Executive Director of Joya Child and Family Development, and also Teresa, Conway, the Capital Campaign Manager, who will be joining us later on the show as well. Welcome, Colleen. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having us. This is just a pleasure to be able to get the word out about Joya.
Absolutely. So, well, it's a pleasure to have you here. And so I understand that Joya has a lot of deep roots, a lot of history in Spokane. For those of our viewers that don't know, Joya was formerly known as the Guild School. And many people remember the penny drives, that they see every year. And I understand you just went through a pretty major name change and rebranding. So tell us why Joya and how that process went.
Absolutely. So we have been around for 60 years. This is our 60th anniversary. And yes, up until last year, we were known as the Spokane Guild School and Neuromuscular Center, which is a mouthful. And so many people around Spokane know us as that. We are rather famous for the penny drive. And we decided when we started the Capital campaign, we got some advice from some campaign advisors, Campbell and Company in Seattle, and they advised us that if we were going to go through a name change and a rebranding, that this would be the time to do it, because then we'd be out spreading the word about our Capital campaign and really make the most of that. And so we went through a rather lengthy process. It was about 8 months.
Oh, wow.
We worked with DH here in Spokane, and they just did a fantastic job of really interviewing our staff and key stakeholders in the community that had been involved with us for years. And what came out of all those conversations is that Joya is a place, or the Spokane Guild School was a place that really people described as being full of hope and joy and just sheer positivity. And so we settled on the name Joya because it means jewel or treasure. And that's very much how we see the children as they come through the door, as this treasure that, we're going to help come to fruition. And so the parents and everybody else in the community can see what a joy they are.
Wonderful. So for someone that has never heard of, the Guild School or Joya, tell us what is the organization about and your mission? And
Absolutely. So we are a birth to 3 early intervention provider. We are the only neurodevelopmental center of excellence in Eastern Washington. So what that means is children who are suspected to have a delay or a disability, or perhaps they have a diagnosis that is known to result in a delay down the road, we provide PT, OT, speech therapy, a social worker. We have a medical director that can provide, case management and a case review for some of our really medically fragile children who have complex diagnoses. We sometimes see children who, they may be one of 10 children in the world or people in the world that have a specific diagnosis. It's this amazing resource in Spokane that a lot of people don't know is here. We have people with sophisticated knowledge of rare diagnoses and diseases. And the whole point of all of it is really wrapping around this family and helping them see that you just maybe got the most devastating news of your life that you weren't expecting, but we are here to walk through this with you, and there is hope.
Wow.
There is hope for your child's future.
Well, yeah, you mentioned hope earlier. So for a family that it must be terrifying or just very scary time, and they're trying to figure out what to do and how to come alongside and provide the best for their child and his or her future. And so you're able to come together with these professional experts in their fields of development. And so how long is the program? So if a child is enrolled, how long are you with them?
Great question. So we see children up to the age of 3.
Okay.
So from birth, or in the case of some of our littlest ones who are premature, sometimes before their due date, we start seeing them all the way up until their third birthday, and they graduate on their third birthday.
Okay, wonderful. And I understand just a little bit about developmental timelines, but that's a very critical age, right? The 0 to 3.
You got it. It is. That is the time of greatest brain plasticity for children. So that is the key time when we can make the greatest impact when working with these children. They can rebuild neural pathways, and they can preserve the capacity to have higher function down the road if we start working with them early.
Wow, fascinating. And I can see why hope is such a key to that, because it really breathes life into the future path of these kids. So do you stay in touch with the families throughout the years?
We often do. Yeah, it really, our Joya families are it's a community. And part of the reason the new name is Joya Child and Family Development really is we do as much for the family as we do for the child. So if we can help the family thrive, we help the child thrive. Sure. And so yes, we become often a resource, and we'll hear from parents 5 or 10 years down the road who will call and just want to share with us their child's progress, or we'll get a Christmas card with a picture, which is great. Or sometimes they're calling saying, I don't know where to turn to get help for this, and I trust you and trust your advice. Help me know what to do.
Wow. So, absolutely. That's really neat so it creates almost like a community of its own, or of alumni, if you will, that have come through.
Absolutely.
So, and I understand, now in your current role as executive director, you actually have a longer history with the organization as a parent also, and your child went through the program, I understand. So would you tell us a little bit more about your journey?
Sure. And actually my connection goes back even farther than that, because my degree was in early childhood special ed from Gonzaga University. So I did my student teaching there 29 years ago. Oh, wow. That ages me, I guess. But so I had the chance to be part of the program and understand what a phenomenal resource for our community it is, long before I needed the services. And so it was about 9 years after that when my youngest son was born. So I have 4 children, 4 boys, and when my son...
4 boys.
4 boys.
Busy.
Yeah, 10-year span. And when my youngest was born, he shortly after he was born, he had a stroke, a severe stroke. And it was in a very unusual part of the brain at the top of the brainstem. And so not that most babies have strokes, that's pretty rare in and of itself, but among those who do, that particular type of stroke in that part of the brain is highly unusual. And so it left him with really no sensory function. So the whole sensory core of the brain, the thalamus, was completely wiped out. And so he appeared to be non-responsive, almost comatose, for the first couple of months.
Wow.
So
it must have been devastating.
It was devastating, and I frequently think about that time when we get that first call from parents, and they are where I was at that particular time. So I remember very clearly he just started acting very strangely. He couldn't keep any food down, and he just sort of shut down, and I immediately went to the pediatrician, and they put him in the hospital, and then he started having seizures, and it just very quickly happened from there that it was clear there was something more wrong. And so they ended up actually life-flighting him to Seattle Children's because the only pediatric neurologist here in Spokane happened to be on vacation at the time, and so they said don't expect that he will survive. But if he does, the outcome's not good. So we in Seattle Children's, I remember thinking, fortunately, if he survives, I know where I can go to get help. I know where he can get the services that he needs. And so yes, now, all these years later, as the executive director, I have both that perspective as a parent and knowing what the parents are going through, and really that kind of dark cloud that comes over you as a parent, thinking, what does the future hold for my child? And I know what helped me more than anything was having really knowledgeable therapists there, many of our therapists have been there more than 25 or 30 years,
Wow.
who could walk through that with me. They could answer any question that I had, and they can't predict the future, but they can say, let's work with where he is now. And they started slowly waking up that brain. And my son now, who's 20 years old, graduated from high school 2 years ago now.
Wow.
Lost track of time during COVID.
Yeah, right. Haven't we all?
Yeah, and he is entering the Coast Guard, and he is, not only is he not paralyzed on one side, and he's able to do all the things that they predicted he would never be able to do.
Wow.
You would meet him and say, never in a million years would I imagine that this guy had any difficulties as a young child.
Wow, that's amazing. What an amazing story. And you must be very proud of him and his new role at the Coast Guard and everything. And so as a leader, it's rare to be able to truly empathize and say, hey, I've been there, and you can guide these parents and the organization from a very unique perspective, which is really neat. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I just love being in the position that I'm in to help families who are struggling with going through this process know that there's hope.
There is, yeah, and you're a testament to that as well, personally,
Yep.
well, with your experience with your son. Well, wonderful. Well, we're going to take just a short break, and when we come back, we'll hear from Teresa Conway, the capital campaign manager, on the future of Joya and the new capital campaign for building, and we'll be right back. Managing finances can be complex. At Loran Graham Company, we're a team of certified financial planners helping clients pursue financial freedom in retirement, live generously, and seek to make a positive impact in the world through faith-based investing.
Loran Graham, CEO and President, is an LPL financial advisor. He's also a published author and nationally recognized leader in the field of faith-based investing.
Visit our website today at lorangraham.com to request an initial consult at no cost or future obligation and learn how you can become part of a growing movement of investors who want to align their investments with biblical values. Well, welcome back to Community Connections. I'm your host, Loran Graham, and we're here today with the Joya Child and Family Development, and we just heard from their executive director, and now we have the privilege to hear from Teresa Conway, their capital campaign manager. So Teresa, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Well, it's been so much fun to learn more about the great things that Joya is doing and how you're serving the community in a very unique way, special circumstances for families going through having a need, for their for the early development. And so just wanted to see if you could share a little bit more about how you got involved in the organization. And I understand that you're also a parent that has gone through. So tell us more about your story.
Yeah, so parents that are involved with Joya seem to stay connected forever. That's a big part of who we are. But I had heard of Joya, as Colleen mentioned earlier, the Spokane Guild School, when I first moved to Spokane through the Penny Drive. So I knew of it, thought it was an amazing organization, never dreamed I would need their services. So I have a son, James, who's 10 years old now, but when he was 4 months old, about 3.5 months old, he got sick, and up until that time we thought he was just, that we were blessed with this perfect little child, and he ended up in the hospital with pneumonia, and in the process of that we came to discover that he had not been able to swallow properly the first 3 months of life, and he had been silently aspirating. So it led to the next question, well, why is he doing that? Everything else seeming typical. So they did an MRI and revealed that James was born without the center part of his brain. It's called he had complete agenesis of the corpus callosum. So as parents, it's the worst possible news you can get. And everything runs through your mind that you go to places that you never thought you would go as a parent. So we were heartbroken, frankly, because we had this beautiful boy and we just couldn't really understand that that's what he had. So We did not stay down very long because we quickly realized, okay, we have to learn about this and do what we can to help him. And the first thing I thought of was Joya. I had heard what they did for families, and I didn't know exactly what, and I think that a lot of people don't. I didn't realize that what the program encompassed. But we asked at the hospital, we got referred. And from the very beginning, starting the program with him, that's when they really flipped the script for us, and they didn't approach us from a place of, we're really sorry to hear about your child, because you get a lot of that. It was like, look at this beautiful baby. We want to play with him and we want to help him grow. And so as a parent, it's so empowering to start thinking that way. And that changed us. And it's how we got involved 10 years ago now, and how we stayed involved once our son aged out of the program.
Wow. And how long have you been part of the leadership team?
So I came on to Joya in a formal capacity 2 years ago.
Okay.
Prior to that, once our son aged out of the program at 3 and went into special education in the schools, we volunteered. We always, volunteered however we could. I sat on the foundation board. And then when Joya started to work on the rebrand in the capital campaign, I came on to work on that project. So 2 years officially, but 10 years unofficially.
Sure, absolutely. And so then you can also identify just what the parents and their stories, and just the fear and the how scary that can be. When you're trying to do the best for your son or daughter, and where do you go where they can get the best help and care, and in a place that's positive and where they believe in the child, and that they can be on a good path. And so you're in fundraising. Is there a cost to the parents for the program, and how does that work?
So the way the program works from the beginning, when you're referred, you meet with a whole team who evaluates your child to see what they need, and then the very critical part too is then, depending on if they are medically fragile, which my son was, they could come in center, or most likely at that age they're coming into your home.
Okay.
So when they first meet with you and evaluate what you need, they're not looking at what you can afford as a family. They're looking at what your child needs in order to thrive. So in my son's case, that was speech therapy and occupational therapy, physical therapy, special education, and early on that all happens in the home. So you can imagine the cost of those services. We didn't have to, we contributed what we could, but because Joya is a nonprofit, and we are funded by a third through state funding, a third through insurance and Medicaid,
Okay.
if you have private insurance, which we were fortunate to, and then a third through donations. That's how the program is essentially paid for. But you can imagine, I think that the number currently is up to 76% of the families we see are on Medicaid.
Okay.
So they don't have something that they can contribute. And we don't want them worrying about that. We want them focused 100% on their child, so that they can get to a point where they can either leave having reached their age-appropriate milestones, which half our kiddos do, or like my son, they leave having done things that doctors thought he may never do, like walk and eat on his own and those sorts of things.
Wow. So, and so from newborn to age 3 is sort of that's the age that you focus on. How many children are in the program typically from year to year? So
it rotates obviously on when you turn 3 and you age out, so it's kind of a rolling number. But within a year, we serve about 300 kids a year.
300 kids, and in the Spokane community here.
Yeah. So our service area is Spokane County.
Okay.
So that's who we serve currently. So 300 kids roughly in Spokane County within a year. But we know the need is much greater than that.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And I understand that you're working on a new facility. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
I would love to share about that. So anybody who's familiar with Joya and our location where we've been for 38 years, we're on Garland. And we've been in a surplus Spokane Public Schools building all that time. It's been a great home for us, but we long ago outgrew it. So we've used every space as best we can, but it wasn't built for us, and we've outgrown it. And we have a lease that the school district has been very generous with all these years, but it's coming up in 2022, and we've known that as an organization for some time. So for the past decade, the organization was working on finding a new home, not just because we needed to be out, but more importantly, because we know that there's a growing demand for birth to 3 early intervention services. There's many infants and toddlers in our community who could benefit from this. So we, in 2017, found the perfect spot in the University District and purchased the land.
Okay.
And then in 2018 formally began our capital campaign, which I'm currently was brought on to work on with a team of folks. And so we're in the process of raising the money for a new building, hoping to break ground in the spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what is your goal for the capital campaign?
So our total capital campaign goal is $18.5 million.
Okay.
Which includes our land purchase and then the new facility. And the beauty of the new facility is that it's built just for us. So it will be built towards our mission, and it will allow us to double the amount of kids that we serve in the community. So that's a really critical piece. And then the location was chosen specifically to be closer to higher ed and the medical community. We work very closely with students from programs all across the health sciences, and there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration. So
Yeah, it's wonderful, especially with the new medical school going in.
exactly,
and everything.
yeah. I mean, you could think we had our first UW student, medical student do a round in March, like right before everything closed down. So came to our current facility to follow around and shadow our medical director. So there's just a lot of good opportunity there for learning and learning from kids that you may not see in any other setting.
Sure, sure. And so just in the minute or so we have
Yeah.
left, if somebody were interested in volunteering or getting involved, of course donating to Joya, what would be the best way to get in touch with you?
The easiest thing to do is joya.org.
Okay.
It's short and sweet. And so if you go there, you can find information about the capital campaign, information about our program, or how to contact any of us, and just learn more about what we're doing. And then when the time is right, we love to set up tours of the new space or the current facility once we get past these COVID restrictions. But yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. Well, thank you so much
Yeah,
for
thank
being with us
you.
today,
Yeah.
and wish Joya all the best in its efforts to get the new building completed and up and running. And that's all the time we have for today. This is Loran Graham with Community Connections. Thanks for joining us.